All right, ELD back with Brainstorm MTG. We've got some Legacy filmed live at Scholars in Brockton, Massachusetts. Every Wednesday at 7:30, we play Legacy with some of the best players in New England. And here we have one of them, Andy Mogg, put up a lot of results in tournaments all over New England. And he is on a Punishing Dack list, very similar to Check Pile, but very much an invention of his own he's worked on using Punishing Fire along with a Dack Faden engine, which can generate tremendous card advantage in matchups where you don't need to be throwing the burn at your opponent's creatures. And of course, being a great control engine versus the more board-based, lower-to-the-ground strategies, cards like Delver or decks like Death and Taxes. So here, game one, we see a Underground Sea coming in. Nice signed, revised copy there, signed by Rob Alexander. And a Brainstorm. So working on the card selection there. And a tough matchup for Punishing Dack here. Really, the fact that he's going to have a bunch of creatures that he can potentially kill himself is something to look out for in terms of bridge from below management. And he does have Force of Will to stop a explosive combo turn. So very interactive match, relatively speaking. Also has Deathrite Shaman. So Gitaxian Probe, going to try and take a look. That will give perfect information, as well as set up additional dredge steps. So really an excellent card here. And a heads up play by Andy there. He actually Force of Wills the Gitaxian Probe, a play a lot of people would not make, and almost certainly the correct play. Baleful Strix coming down, drawing a card, and creating a blocker that would almost certainly die in any combat step, effectively getting rid of those bridge from belows in trade with anything. That is, Baleful Strix are definitely good at dying for the cause. And discarding Stinkweed Imp, so keeping the dredge train going. And over on Andy's side, we see a Notion Thief, a Kolaghan's Command, Fatal Pushes, a whole mix of spicy cards that look to create a rather complex situation to play around. Stinkweed Imp dredging all sorts of dredgers and Dread Return. And we've got a Baleful Strix, a Balustrade Spy. So really tense game state here. At any point, a Dread Return could just end the game. Prized Amalgam going into the graveyard there. That's actually a really big body for this matchup. That's outside of Punishing Fire range. And that is what we've been seeing, is the size of Prized Amalgam actually very relevant. A lot of the removal in this format, very low to the ground and really unable to handle a 3 toughness creature. In a world full of Snapcasters, a 3/3 is king. Alright, so here we go. More Prized Amalgams and a Nether Shadow. So that is a way back for those Prized Amalgams. And that Deathrite Shaman, one of the most important cards in the matchup. Now, he does not have green mana available to him right now, so he'll be unable to actually remove a creature. We'll see if he has access to green. We know he runs, because of Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burn Willows, so actually more access to green mana than a typical list running Deathrite, where they'll often just splash a single tropical island. Andy, on the other hand, much more access because of those groves. We see Punishing Fire, Dack Faden, all sorts of spicy cards, and a fetch land. So we may see a fetch for Tropical. We've got Nether Shadow, Prized Amalgams. Now may be the time to go ahead and get that Trop and get rid of that Nether Shadow. So again, good play from Andy, trying to make sure that I can't get those Prized Amalgams into play. There's another Nether Shadow and another Prized Amalgam, Bridge from Below, and Ichorid. So there's actually 2 different creatures now that he has to stop from coming back. So So those prized amalgams will be coming in. No significant clock so far from the Punishing Dack list, and there's discarding a Grave-Troll. So this game going very long so far. Deathrite Shaman should be untapped here. There we go. So very interesting game state here. We do have Bridge from Below considerations. That Kolgan's Command, unable to bring that Snapcaster back. He has been exiled, making me discard a card. Almost certainly not worth doing with Kolgan's Command. And Deathrite Shaman going to give a little bit more life and hope to Punishing Dack, getting rid of that Ichorid. Excellent choice there as well. A lot of the time, people undervalue the usefulness of Ichorid as an engine. And what that card can do is just continue to come back every turn, and every time it dies, generate value off of those Bridge from Below. So as an engine of generating board presence, Ichorid very, very powerful. And Narcomoebas everywhere. That is an excellent dredge. So we've got a couple of Narcomoebas, Nether Shadow going to the bin. Best way to get additional creatures on top of him is, of course, Phantasmagorian allows you to discard 3 cards. Dread Return allows you to sacrifice your creatures on board. And we'll see what we've got. Deathrite Shaman is tapped down, so a card like Dread Return could possibly resolve here. That red card looks like we've got Flayer the Hatebound in the graveyard. That is one of the best ways to close out a game. Flayer actually doing damage equal to its power when he enters the battlefield. I'm going to go ahead and actually have the list right in front of me here. Shuffle through and see if I can. There we go. See if this works. Trying all sorts of new stuff here. So there we go. There is Flayer the Hatebound. That is a great way to finish a combo kill. You can hit Dread Return on Flayer and then follow it up with Golgari Grave-Troll and allow you to get around cards like Ensnaring Bridge as well. Not that that is in this matchup. So we have a removal spell and Punishing Fire on the Baleful Strix, stopping that Bridge from Below from really doing its work, and a whole fistful of removal and interesting spells. We got Punishing Fire, Fatal Push, looks like Notion Thief and Dack Faden. Usually that would be an excellent combination. Here, not so much. So there we go. He could potentially set up a Dack Faden Notion Thief scenario versus a different style of deck, but against me, making me discard cards, not so great. And there's a whole bunch of Prized Amalgams. They're going to be very difficult to deal with. Even with that type of removal, if you kill them, they're just coming back. Andy making sure to fetch the correct land. Looks like a Toxic Deluge might have just flown out of the deck there. Card to be aware of, but again, the recursion on these creatures does make it very difficult. A Fatal Push trying to buy a little bit of time. The rest of those removal spells only able to deal 2 damage, so Prized Amalgam safely out of range there. A very grim situation. So this was kind of a slow burner. Manaless Dredge can just combo out and win, but it can also do exactly this, just kind of grind and build board presence. And we've got another Nether Shadow getting removed. There's actually one lower down. There we go. So Deathrite doing its best, but looks like that is not going to be enough. Let's see here. Phantasmagorian discarding 3 cards, including a Phantasmagorian. That's going to ensure that I can always discard 3 cards whenever I need to. A great way to make sure those Nether Shadows come back, and sure enough, there's the other Nether Shadow. That'll trigger the other Prized Amalgam. And once Prized Amalgams get going, so difficult to stop. The fact that they trigger each other is just hugely problematic. They can die during a combat step, then the other ones come back, which brings the ones that died during the combat step back the next turn, and it is very, very difficult to actually break up that play. So there is a Narcomoeba dredged, and we've got a Bridge from Below in the graveyard, so really getting grim here. And here we go with the attack step. 9 damage coming in. And Andy just choosing to take here. Not going to use any of his removal on any of those creatures. Not with the Bridge from Below kicking around. 14 damage. Would do it for him, but there is no clear line. And it looks like sacrificing 3 creatures. Alright, so Dread Return, and he responds to the bridge triggers by punishing fire his own Deathrite, and that actually brings in Flayer the Hatebound. That's going to do 4 damage to Andy. And we'll see if there's another Dread Return in there. Alright, so he's taken the damage there. And another Dread Return, even without the zombie tokens. That's going to hit Golgari Grave-Troll, and there's the combo finish for you. So that's probably 30-ish, 40 damage maybe to the face, and that is going to do it right there. Off to the sideboarded games. Let's see if we can sneak some type of peek at the cards he's bringing in. Not really. That was a quick decision. Andy knows exactly what he needs to be bringing in. And on my side of things, likely just going to bring in a bunch of creature removal. Deathrite Shaman, one of the most problematic cards, even compared to sideboard cards. That card can do a ton of work. That particular game, it didn't do nearly as much as it does in some of the subsets where you only have a single dredger. But yeah, Deathrite Shaman, very, very problematic in the early game. And once you get going, sure, the impact's not as much as, say, a Tormod's Crypt. But it can really slow things down. So we're going to want to keep him off of the board if possible. And it is a very creature-based deck, so that creature removal could possibly be worthwhile on other targets as well. And it looks like some of the slower cards are coming out, cards like Kolaghan's Command. Makes a lot of sense there. 3 mana, an awful lot to invest in killing a creature that's just going to come back the next turn anyways. Excuse me. So Andy has been very successful in the ongoing series of legacy events that Scholars has been running. On a monthly basis, we do smaller events, and then every quarter we do larger events for unbelievable prizes, cards like Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale. I believe he did top 4 that event, if not top 8 it. We do have a legacy event this weekend. That is February 10th, if you are watching close to the air date. And the following weekend, February 17th, we're going to have a Vintage event. Really looking forward to that. And I will probably be playing Dredge in Vintage as well. I don't usually play Dredge in Legacy, but I did have this deck built, and I realized I purchased the deck complete. Very often when people are trading in entire collections, they'll have a couple of decks that weren't really their tier 1 decks, perhaps loner decks that they'd lend out to friends, make sure that as many people can play in those legacy events as possible. And I was surprised after piloting it to go back and see that it wasn't running Chancellor of the Annex, which is a card that I consider to be one of the most important cards in the format, in the matchups. I mean, that card stops cards like Deathrite Shaman on turn 1. It can really slow down Storm decks if they have to sculpt on their first turn. And it's not a perfect solution by any stretch. I mean, there are times where Storm can just throw a spare Lotus Petal into it, and it's really not that big a deal. But there are also a bunch of games where they just needed that turn in order to set up. So there we actually see a Chancellor, and we'll see if that makes a difference here, pushing off of that turn 1 Deathrite or not. And it looks like Andy grabbing an Underground Sea. And he is gonna just push a Duress into it. So he's just gonna stop that trigger from being an issue by throwing a largely dead card away against it. And there we go, discarding Golgari Grave-Troll. So Grave-Troll's gonna hopefully set up some explosive turns here, but if not, you know, we'll have to settle for some slow, grindy games. Either way, this is a very dangerous list in Manaless Dredge. 2 cards back, fetch land on top. And Andy is going to go ahead and fetch. Feels he has all of the mana he needs in his hand. Getting Volcanic Island. So still no Deathrite Shaman. Into Brainstorm. We see a Punishing Fire and a Grove of the Burn Willows, and it looked like a Beta Swamp. So still largely in the clear here. Pretty comfortable game. Golgari Grave-Troll finds a brother and a bunch of creature removal. So we have both Sickening Shoal and Contagion. Both of those cards excellent at killing Deathrite Shaman, but currently not needed. That is a notable drawback of this deck, is when you're bringing in cards like Contagion and Sickening Shoal, they are total bricks in the graveyard, whereas other cards in the matchup, or sorry, other cards in the deck are very good in the graveyard. Cards like Cabal Therapy, Dread Return, all of the creatures, you know, that is just complete garbage in the graveyard. So probing here. It looks like Gurmag Angler, and that could set a significant clock. Baleful Strix, not nearly as significant a clock, but can be a blocker and can be a body to get rid of those Bridge from Belows as we saw in the previous game. Alright, so getting a couple of Narcomoebas. That is always welcome. In this case, could serve as a chump blocker for the Gurmag Angler if necessary, but hopefully just going to lead toward reanimating something quite large with the Dread Return. We've got Punishing Fire, which can get rid of one of those Narcomoebas. Totally fine. We're not going to waste the Cabal Therapy on that. Could be worth to Cabal Therapy the Gurmag Angler, but likely better to just keep the bodies online. It is a decision. Be interested to hear what you guys think. Is it worth it there to try and get rid of that Gurmag Angler with the Cabal Therapy and stop a potential runaway game? Or is it better to hang back on those bodies to try and set up a Dread Return? We've got a fetch. And Andy, fetch lands are just so good. It is hard to try and get people into an understanding of how much of an impact they made. I remember when they came out in Onslaught, trying to explain to people how big a deal it was, that it was like crop rotation plus Demonic Tutor plus Library of Alexandria plus, you know, Demonic Tutor. Like it did all the things and fixed mana and created card advantage, shuffling away with Brainstorm. The card's just so darn good. Probably the best combo in Legacy's Brainstorm plus Fetch Land. And there we go. Andy's got the mana base that he needs. He can cast any spells that come up, and he trades 2 cards in his hand to get rid of those 2 Narcomoebas. On my turn, going to the draw step, dredging 6 again, and again finding another Grave-Troll, so plenty of dredges coming up 6 at a time. And going to discard. Really looking for some type of recursive creatures here. Getting some Prized Amalgams, Ichorids, Nether Shadows, any of that would be very welcome at this point, but Andy not currently putting a ton of pressure on. Though that Gurmag Angler could very quickly look to change that situation. And that is what he's going to pull the trigger on. So we've got a Gurmag. And maximum delving happening, leaving just the Punishing Fire. And keeping up 3 mana. And a Deathrite, so solid turn there. Establishing a clock, getting some disruption down. And I'm fumbling a little bit here, trying to find some type of creature to come back from the graveyard. Nothing yet. Well, there's an Ichorid and another Shadow. So that is a good sign right there. So 2 creatures. Of course, Deathrite Shaman's going to be able to make sure one of them doesn't come back. One of the unusual, highly interactive matches here. Discarding a Grave-Troll. Almost never going to be correct to attack with that Deathrite Shaman. But in this instance, it's a decision. The only green he has being Grove of the Burn Willows. So he's going to go ahead and send it in. So making sure he's not going to be able to eat a creature here to gain some life, instead trying to set a clock. And that may or may not end up being the difference here. We'll see. I mean, that fish can definitely push through a lot of damage. Punishing Fire can make blocking very difficult. Prized Amalgam, Flayer the Hatebound, Bridge from Below is another Prized Amalgam. So now we're talking. This graveyard is getting spicy. And he has Brainstorm in hand, so the options are plentiful. Bridge from Below an option at any time to remove that with Punishing Fire on his own creature. And of course, Punishing Fire going to make it very difficult to block as well. So there we go, Cabal Therapy. And Punishing Fire, killing the Baleful Strix, getting rid of the Bridge from Belows. It looks like there may actually be 3 of those. Doing a very good job of stopping Bridge from generating massive card advantage. That is a card that, if left unchecked, makes winning with a card like Gurmag Angler all but impossible. So we have Flusterstorm, Baleful Strix, and Brainstorm. Cabal Therapy whiffing as it names Force of Will. And then 3 in from Ichorid. So this is anybody's game here. Yeah, that other Bridge from Below located. So 1 more Bridge from Below. So that may be all of them. May have to find a way to win without it. And now we've got a Cabal Therapy, and really any one of those is a reasonable choice. Going with Brainstorm. Interested to know what you would take there. Go ahead and leave that in the comments. Brainstorm, ultimately what I chose, but Flusterstorm going to prevent any type of combo kill, and Baleful Strix is going to be another body in a game that is coming down to a tight race here. There's the Baleful Strix. Drawing a card. Andy leaving green mana open to be able to gain life. When you start getting this low black mana at a premium for Deathrite Shaman, being able to remove instants or sorceries to do 2 damage only has to happen so few times here in order to actually close the game out. This is right down to the wire. Nether Shadow coming in, Ichorid coming in, removing Street Wraith. Usually the go-to choice there. Removing Golgari Thug, triggering Prized Amalgam number 1 and number 2. Once those Prized Amalgams get going, they will be very difficult for Andy to stop, but this game threatens to be over one way or another sooner than later. There's another Cabal Therapy and another Prized Amalgam. And here we go. 7 damage. If I swing with the Nether Shadow, he may stay home on defense. Let's see. No, just that. Baleful Strix with a chump. Andy going to 11. No bridge from belows. And Cabal Therapy sacrificing Ichorid. Flusterstorm, the only known card at this point. Hitting 2 Flusterstorm. So just Ponder in hand. Deathrite going to be able to eat one of those Prized Amalgams. So we're during the end step here. And there we go. So only 1 Prized Amalgam coming in. Of course, those Ichorids, very, very threatening at this point. Triggering the other Prized Amalgam. Very, very close game here. So close. Gurmag Angler could potentially just get in here, returning Punishing Fire, getting rid of that blocker, and sending for 5 down to 4. So 2 Deathrite Shaman activations, and this thing is over. But only black mana available. So that Prized Amalgam will be sneaking his way in. And it looks like he's going to go ahead and hit that Dread Return. And that may do it. So here we've got a Prized Amalgam coming in during the end step. Reading the text off there. And here we are, so we're in, looks like we're still in the end step. Discarding 3 to return Phantasmagorian. And with those 2 Ichorids, it looks like this may do it if he doesn't have a surgical or similar effect. There's the Nether Shadow. There's Ichorid number 1. That goes up to 10 damage. Ichorid number 2 is exactly 13. Ichorid number 3, we're up to 16 damage here. And there was no surgical or Faerie Macabre. Looks like all of this is going to be getting in there. Dredging. There's another Nether Shadow. Looks like his day will not come. The rest of the guys are going to take it down before he's called back from the grave. And that looks like it's going to do it. And there it is. 16 damage for the match. Force of Will, unable to stop all of those activated and triggered abilities. Well, there we go. That is a great match. Well played by Andy. That is a lot of interactive Magic, tons of decisions being made, which is not normal for Dredge. A lot of the time you can't interact with it at all, so that is really fun to see. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this type of commentary, let me know in the comments. Let me know how it can improve, and I will continue to try and refine this process to bring you guys the best coverage I can of Vintage and Legacy. Any format where Brainstorm is available, I'm game. This is ELD. Thanks for watching.